Hello there, YouTube. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're recapping all of Tuesday's action. Up next, what's up and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, May 4th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White and the returning Chris Towers. Chris, may the 4th be with you.
Oh, yeah. That's today. I love Star Wars.
Yeah,
I
I'm a
didn't even
fraud.
think about that.
I haven't even, there's like 3 movies I haven't seen. I'm a fraud. I wanted to say it. So
I've seen all. I mean, I think Azer finally saw them within the last couple of years, but for a long time he hadn't seen any of the Star War movies. So I guess you're doing better than the previous host of this podcast in that regard.
I saw the 7th movie, which I guess was the first of the most recent trilogy, and then I didn't watch the 2 after that, or however many movies came out.
I did a 3-hour podcast with Nick Pollock of Pitcher List about the 2nd movie in the new trilogy. If you ever want to check that out, it's longer than the movie itself. So
maybe I'll do that.
That was a good time.
Just watch the original trilogy. Everything else is derivative.
Oh, I've seen the original trilogy, Scott. That's great. But
okay.
I've seen the first 6 movies and then the 7th movie and then
Clone Wars, Rebels. There's a lot of good stuff out there in the Star Wars extended universe.
Chris, you know I've got a long list of things to watch.
That's
anyway,
true,
today on the show, we're not going to talk about Star Wars for the entire podcast. We are going to have maybe our most extensive Worryometer yet. Is Jazz Chisholm awesome? And another weird start for Charlie Morton. Of course, we'll talk about all that. But first, take it away, Susan.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
11 in a row. Anyway, Chris, what do you got? Oh, my goodness gracious.
11 Yankees wins in a row.
Yeah.
That's been doing this for a while, Chris. I know we haven't seen you in a while, but it's getting old.
Yeah, nobody likes that. Carlos Carrasco. Nice bounce back start from him. He got rocked in his previous outing, 8 earned runs in 3 2/3, but he came back with 8 shutout against a Braves lineup that has not been hitting the ball particularly well, but still, you like to see it. 18 swinging strikes, I believe, for Carlos Carrasco in this one. Let me make sure, 17 of them. 8 on the fastball, 9 on the slider. And overall, I mean, only 5 strikeouts today, but overall, he's been very good this season. And it was nice to see him bounce back like that in case you had any concerns.
For sure. Yeah, this was his second start of at least 7 2/3 innings pitched. He did that earlier in the season as well. The fastball and slider accounted for 83% of Carrasco's pitches in this start. Changeup took a bit of a backseat, but didn't really matter because the fastball and the slider, they really had it working in this one. The ERA is 3.30. The whip is 1.00 for Carlos Carrasco.
I'll point out, too, his changeup had been his best swing and miss pitch this year. So for him to just ditch it and still get 17 whiffs, pretty good.
Yeah, and based on those 17 swinging strikes, I would imagine he probably deserved more than 5 strikeouts. So again, if you're worried about the strikeout total at all in this one, you should not be. Carlos Carrasco is awesome. Just stay healthy. Scott, who do you have? Oh my goodness gracious, from Tuesday.
I'm going to go with the guy who's widely available, and that is Tommy Pham. Had a big game, 3 hits, including a home run and a double. He's been hot too. The overall numbers, you can understand why he's so widely available, because like many other hitters, he was off to a dreadful start in April, but his last 8 games, now he's batting .400 with 2 home runs and 4 doubles. And what's most impressive about Tommy Pham is that even excluding what he did today with the home run and the double and the 3 hits, 98th percentile in average exit velocity. Basically the top of the heap. He's hitting the ball as hard as anyone on average is Tommy Pham. Low line drive rate, so you can understand why maybe the batting average is suffering, but I don't think that's going to be a long-standing issue. I just think that's early season noise, and the quality of contact is the bigger deal to me. Especially since he's starting to heat up. Obviously, playing in Cincinnati, it's going to help those numbers play up. He has some stolen base potential, only 1 so far, but we've seen him steal lots of bases in the past. So I think this is somebody who needs to be picked up in all 5x5 leagues, and really anywhere you need outfield help, because there's a chance he's just going to be. There's a chance I think he just takes off and becomes a must-start player rest of the way.
Scott, I'll do you one further. I think that he is a must-add player regardless of format. 3 outfielder leagues, points leagues, category leagues. Tommy Pham right now, you mentioned the quality of contact. His batting average, his actual batting average is a 240. His XBA is 262. His X-slug is 482. He's in the 80th percentile in sprint speed, according to StatCast. He walks a bunch. He's got a 12% walk rate. 25% strikeout rate is more than manageable. He is only 38% rostered on CBS, which to me makes him the most under-rostered player right now in fantasy baseball league. So I am willing to make that claim. Chris, you weren't as on board before we started. What's wrong with adding Tommy Pham?
No, it's not so much that you shouldn't add Tommy Pham. I think it's fine to add Tommy Pham. He's a hitter who's hitting well right now, and there aren't many of those. So yeah, add him. I just like the most under-rostered player. His numbers coming into this season or into this game were like 703 OPS, 3 home runs, and a steal. So like that sounds like a guy who's rostered in 38% of leagues, playing in a bad lineup, coming off a bad season,
right? Coming
off a bad season prior to that. The interesting thing is he's been underperforming his expected stats 3 years in a row now. His expected WOBA has actually remained relatively constant. 360 in 2020, 354 in 2021, 359 entering today. It was 380 in 2018, so not that far off. 359 in 2019. So I don't know if it's just been bad luck over the past couple of seasons, and maybe he's due for a little good luck, or at least maybe he won't have such bad luck this season. But I also wonder if there's something in his approach that makes him prone to underperforming. You know, when we think about guys who tend to overperform expected stats, the kind of player that you would think it would be a fast player would help, which Tommy Pham is. But, you know, I think there's also like guys who spray the ball all over the field, guys who tend to hit the ball in the air to the pull side. And Tommy Pham does not do the latter. He's pretty pull heavy when he hits the ball on the ground. He is not at all when he hits the ball in the air. Last season, I think his pull rate on fly balls was 15%, and on line drives it was like 18%. So, you know, if you were looking for a type of player who might underperform their expected stats, that might be what it would look like. So that's one thing to keep an eye on with Tommy Pham. But yeah, I agree, Adam. There are so few good hitters right now.
Yeah, I mean that's the main takeaway is like anyone that's hitting should be rostered, and that's why I just find it interesting that Tommy Pham is as low rostered as he is right now. Would you guys drop? There's 3 names I'm looking at here: Dylan Carlson, Avisail Garcia, Jared Kelenic. Would you drop all 3 for Tommy Pham?
Definitely the first 2.
I would try not to with Kelenic, but
right. There's an upside issue with Kelenic that I'm not quite ready to pass up that. Not knowing how May is going to play out across the league, I'm hopeful that offense improves quite a bit. I don't think I think it's going to be a bad year for home runs specifically, but in terms of how balls in play perform, strikeout rate is actually improved this year for the first time in like decades. So I'm hoping we'll see something similar to last May, where there was just terrible numbers from high end players, and then they took off basically from May 1st on.
I would drop Joe Adell for him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Joe Adell sent down, of course, to AAA on Tuesday, and his roster rate is still 67%. So that is a move that you can make, and that's a good call, Chris. Unfortunately, our guy, Joe Adell, we're not going to see him for, I don't know, at least the foreseeable future.
At least 10 days.
At least 10 days. That is correct. Oh my goodness gracious for me. And this will take us right into Worryometer for today. Charlie Morton, another, I'm not going to say rough start. I'm going to say weird start. On paper, it's not a good one. 5 2/3, 6 hits, 5 runs. 4 of those were earned, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. He only had 5 swinging strikes in this start. That is now 4 straight starts where Charlie Morton has 3+ walks in a start. And that is, he didn't even do that last year over a 3-start stretch, 3+ walks. He's now done that 4 starts in a row, 4 of his first 5 starts to open the season. He only had first pitch strikes to 14 of 28 batters in this one. And same issue that we talked about last week, Chris, could not get his fastball or his sinker over for strikes. And of course, that's just going to lead to a bunch of problems because you fall behind in the count. Then people are not going to chase the curveball later on in the count. Curveball hasn't looked great either. But also in this start, he was just unlucky. There were some soft hits early on in this game, some bad defense, and then he settled down. He retired.
He got burned by the shift a few times. It only gave up 6 hits, so you get burned by the shift a few times.
He retired 9 of the final 12 batters he faced too. He was much more efficient over those, really 3-4 final innings for Charlie Morton. So that's why I say it's a weird start. It's overall, I don't know. There's some good, there's some bad. Scott, we'll start with you. The Worryometer level for our guy, Charlie Morton.
It's still pretty low, to be honest. I'll go 4. There are a lot of people trying to convince me I should not be backing Charlie Morton anymore. And I don't know why. I don't know what they stand to gain by convincing me. I think maybe they're just looking for me to talk them out of their stance, hopefully. Because, what good does it do to convince me not to buy Charlie Morton? I don't know. I don't really quite understand what their motivation is. But in any case, you broke it down pretty well. I'll also point out the average exit velocity against him in this game was 82.2, so very low. Wasn't getting hit hard on average. He still only had 5 swinging strikes, so it's not like his stuff was playing up. He's clearly fighting it right now. You mentioned the location. That's a part of it, but velocity looks good. That spin rate is still 3,000 RPM on the curveball. It's not like there's obvious skills erosion happening here. I think he's just... Paul Bird, who's part of the Braves broadcast team, was pointing out how he had a mechanical issue early on last season that was contributing to some struggles, and he feels like he's seeing more mechanical problems for Morton here in the early going. That's something that could be fixed very suddenly. And so, I just want to point out it's a long season, and about halfway through last season, he had a 4.50 ERA. Did Morton, and obviously ended up with ace-like numbers. So I was to the point after his last start where I said, okay, obviously you can't drop him, but you can sit him if you want to. Kind of backed off that when I saw he had 2 starts. The temptation there was too strong for the 2-start week. But I'll reiterate that. I still buy him long term. If you want to sit him till he gets things right, I don't blame you.
I did see this tweet from. Sorry, Chris. I saw a tweet from David Adler. He does work with StatCast. Apparently, the break on Charlie Morton's curveball isn't the same this year. It's just not as good. But it's not off by some crazy margin, but it is not as good. So just wanted to get that in there. Chris, 2 questions for you. Do you bench him for now? Do you look to buy low?
I do want to buy low. It reminds me of Luis Castillo at a similar point last season. And the thing with Castillo was he didn't turn it around immediately. It did take until around June before we really started to see the results. But the thing there was you looked at the underlying numbers. And when we say underlying numbers, there's a couple different ways that we can mean it. We can mean like strikeout rate and walk rate and the peripheral stats. But in those regards, Charlie Morton's not pitching well. He's just not. The 17% strikeout rate, 13% walk rate, that's terrible. And if he continues pitching like this, he's going to be terrible. He hasn't been unlucky. But the underlying physical factors, like Scott said, the velocity, the spin rate, the release point, that stuff mostly looks right. I'm not going to say it looks all the way right. The extension that he's getting on his pitches from the pitcher's mound is not the same as it has been last year, and that could point to a mechanical issue. But it's one of those situations where it seems like Charlie Morton's probably just off. And that makes me think that he'll probably just get on at some point. Not to oversimplify or to express too much faith because there's no guarantee that he gets there. But it'd be one thing if he was throwing 92 miles an hour. or if he just didn't have the feel for his curveball at all and he just couldn't spin it the way he has in the past. But neither of those seem to be the case. It kind of just seems like he just needs to pitch better. And I have faith that he will.
Okay, I believe the next start for Morton is this weekend at Milwaukee. If you play in a daily lineup league, Scott, kudos to you. You said to bench Charlie Morton in daily lineup leagues yesterday. So I would say stick with that. No, he's at home against the Brewers this weekend.
I'm fine benching him until he figures it out, but definitely not dropping him, which I'm sure there are some people out there who want to. And I wouldn't be trying to like spite trade him either. Like, I don't think this is a get whatever you can for him. I think it's like Luis Castillo last year, and it's frustrating when you're in it, but I have faith that he's going to figure it out. It doesn't seem like he's that far off.
All right, let's move over to a few other players on the Worryometer. Trevor Rogers with his second rough start of the season. This one up against the Diamondbacks. 4 1/3 innings, 6 hits, 5 runs. 4 of those were earned. He only had 7 swinging strikes on 78 pitches. Scott, the ERA for Trevor Rogers, 6.14. His whip is 1.50. What is the Worryometer level on Trevor Rogers?
So based on my priors, it's going to be higher than for Morton because I was worried about Trevor Rogers coming in. I had him on my preseason bust list. I don't know why people aren't trying. I'm not getting any questions about dropping Trevor Rogers. He has an ERA over 6. He has a 1-4 record. I don't know why those questions aren't coming in.
It's because he's not 38 years old, Scott. That's why.
Coming off a broken leg. Yeah.
I'm not saying anybody should drop him, but yeah, it's kind of a weird double standard there. Anyway, he looks a lot like the guy we saw the final 2 months of last season. His swinging strike rate is just over 10%. It's not very good. And so I am worried about the same things I was worried coming into the season, where I don't know if he caught the league by surprise those first 2 months last year, if his stuff was just playing up in a way it never has before and then returned to normal. I don't know what happened to cause his effectiveness to drop off mid-season last year, but it seems to have carried over into this year. And if that's the case, he might be kind of a borderline mixed league guy.
The changeup is what has really stood out to me for Trevor Rogers. The swinging strike rate on that pitch last year was 19%. So far this year, 9.7% on Trevor Rogers' changeup.
Yeah,
so
that's where I would push back on he looks like he did the last 2 months last season, because he still had a swinging strike rate with the changeup of it, or a whiff rate with the changeup of at least 30% every month last season, including 29.3% in July of 2021. I know I said 30%, but we'll round up. And then 35% in September. So far this year, it's 18%. Well, it was 18% coming into this start, and he had, 3 whiffs on 8 swings on 25 pitches. So still not great. So I that's the biggest thing, is it's just his best pitch last season he doesn't seem to have right now, in a way that wasn't true at the end of last season. He's getting a decent amount of whiffs on his slider. He's getting a decent amount of whiffs on his fastball. His fastball swinging strike rate is actually up. And so I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if that's something to be concerned about, but it does suggest to me that there's a relatively straightforward fix. I don't want to say there's an easy fix, because I don't know what's going on.
I've seen
it does seem like it's just get the changeup back.
I've seen a suggestion, because the changeup is playing so poorly, that maybe he's tipping the pitch, which would be a quick fix. But yeah, I mean, obviously, since I came in with some skepticism, I'm going to be a little more worried than somebody who didn't.
All right, let's move over to a hitter, Marcus Semien. He actually went 2 for 5 on Tuesday. It was his third multi-hit game of the season. He is now batting 165 with 0 home runs. His expected batting average is 174. Marcus Semien's average exit velocity is 84.8 miles per hour. That is 7th lowest among qualified hitters. Chris, your Worryometer level for Marcus Semien.
Yeah, I realized neither Scott nor I has actually answered the Worryometer portion of the question so far. So I'm going to go ahead and put
6, didn't I, for Rogers?
I didn't hear a number. I'm going to say 2 on Morton, 3 on Rogers, 4 on Semien. So whoever's next gets a 5, I guess.
Wow. Yours is calibrated lower than mine.
The thing with Semien is, I don't know. Like, this is still a hard time of the year for me because I tend to react slowly, and it's entirely possible that Marcus Semien just, for whatever reason, has just lost it. And we were skeptical that he was going to repeat last season. I don't think any of us expected him to, but we still all expected him to be pretty good. And maybe he's just going to stink all season long. He's 31. That happens. But he's still running fast. And his max exit velo is right in the same range as it was last season. 108.1 so far, 109.5. Last season, it's usually right around 108. He's not striking out a ton. He's not swinging and missing at an abnormally high rate. He's not chasing at an abnormally high rate. Like, it mostly just seems like he's not hitting the ball well right now. And maybe that will continue. Maybe there's something broken with Marcus Semien that won't be fixed. But I don't think the underlying numbers suggest that Marcus Semien has just collapsed in terms of his skill set. And so I generally believe he will be roughly as good as I expected him to be coming into the season, which is significantly worse than he was last season, but better than he has been so far.
I don't know that anything will have had to break for Marcus Semien for him to no longer work in this league context, because he was one of those fringier exit velocity guys who somehow still managed to get a lot of home run power out of it. And now we're seeing specifically the way that numbers have declined from last April. Yes, batting average and offense is down as a whole, but those numbers are batting average, BABIP. They're actually similar to last April, right in line with last April. It's really the home run to fly ball rate that has dropped the most from last April, which would affect a fringy exit velocity guy.
But that's not really what we're seeing with Marcus Semien. It's not like he's hitting the ball as hard as he did last season, and it's just dying at the warning track. He's like, he had a 41% hard hit rate last season. He has a 23% hard hit rate this season. So,
but you're saying his max exit velocity is similar to last year. He's a guy who puts the ball in the air a ton, so he needs those fly balls going over the fence. And yeah, I mean he's also cold, but I'm saying that it could be a combination of the two. That yes, he will be better than a 163 batting average, but will he be someone who produces like a must-start player in fantasy? And I'll put my Worryometer I'll put him at a 5 on the Worryometer. The contrasting argument that I'm going to argue against myself here. Marcus Semien hit 211 with a 658 OPS last April. He was one of those hitters one of the many hitters who looked like he was dead last April too, and then suddenly came to life. And that could happen again, but the odds are even longer this year, I think, particularly for a hitter with his batted ball profile.
All right, let's move back over to the pitching side of things. Scott, your boy Ranger Suarez, he's been quite blah through his first 5 starts. 4.63 ERA, a 1.63 whip. He was pitching again on Tuesday. He allowed 5 runs. 3 of those were earned over 5 innings pitched against the Texas Rangers. The swinging strike rate is down this year. The ground ball rate is down. Sinker hasn't been as effective. What is your Worryometer level on Ranger Suarez?
It's a 5, but less because of what he's doing right now and more because there just isn't much of a track record to fall back. Obviously, he was great last year. And I think because he was so good last year, he deserves a longer leash. People are asking me if they should drop him. Well, I mean, he's more droppable than Charlie Morton, but me personally, I wouldn't drop Ranger Suarez because I think if you have ground ball skills as good as his, that is the sort of outlier skill set that is worth betting on over the long haul. It's worth pointing out he basically didn't have a spring training. Mainly command has been his issue, and command is the sort of thing where it can influence. If you're struggling with command, it can have wholesale impact on your stats. It could explain the drop in strikeouts too. But the pure stuff metrics, like with Charlie Morton, looks pretty similar to last year. And so, yeah, I want to hold on to Ranger Suarez, but I'll put him right in the middle of the worryometer at a 5.
Are you good with keeping him on the bench for now, Scott?
I don't think it's as automatic as with Morton.
He hasn't been bad in the same way Charlie Morton has. He just hasn't been good.
He's been underwhelming. His previous outing was a quality start. But yeah, the whip and ERA are both higher than you'd like. I think in a points league especially, I'm not going to flatly say sit Suarez because obviously he's relief pitcher eligible.
All right. Somebody who has been quite bad, just straight up bad, is Tyler Mahle. He leads all qualified starting pitchers with a 7.01 ERA. And on Tuesday, he allowed 5 runs. 4 of those were earned over 3 1/3 innings pitched. I've noticed the control is way off this year. The walks are up for him. 3 more walks in this start. He has 14 total, and he's averaging 4.9 walks per 9. Again, this is Tyler Mahle. Chris, your worryometer level on Tyler Mahle?
I would say I'm like a 6. I mean, the thing with Tyler Mahle that's tough is he's a tinkerer. He's always been a tinkerer. He likes to tinker. And that has manifested itself in his career in various ways. Sometimes he just won't throw one pitch from one start to the next. Sometimes he'll have a completely different repertoire from 1 month to the next, 1 season to the next. Right now, he has stopped throwing his slider to left-handed hitters. He's yet to throw one so far this season. He's throwing only cutters and splitters and fastballs. And the slider whiff rate is really high, but everything else is pretty mediocre. And so I generally think that what's going wrong with Tyler Mahle is probably that he's just trying to figure things out right now because he doesn't have overwhelming stuff. And he's never had great command. So he's always had to kind of figure out what's working for him at any given time. And when that's the case, I think things can get pretty ugly. You know, that there can be a lack of cohesion and a lack of confidence in the way that he pitches sometimes. But I generally think he'll figure it out. But yeah, I'm not so confident in Tyler Mahle and his skill set and his background that I'm willing to overlook these kind of struggles. So yeah, I'm more worried about him than anyone else we've discussed so far.
All right, we'll get to waiver wire pitchers in just a little bit, and I'll bring Tyler Malle's name back up then. Scott, we're getting a lot of questions about catchers right now as well, so I'm going to lump these 3 together. How would you rank them in terms of how worried you are to least worried? Does that make sense? Which one are you most worried about? Salvador Perez, Yasmani Grandal, Mitch Garver. They're all batting below 200 right now.
I'm not worried about any of them, to be honest. I guess I would say I'm most worried about Grandal because he's old and because he is making weak contact, like much weaker than we're used to seeing from him. And so I guess there's some percentage chance this is just the beginning of the end for him. But I would still bet against that this early in the year, coming off the year he just had. I'm least worried about Salvador Perez. I mean, he's the most established, obviously, and his quality of contact is still very high. He's not making enough of it right now, but, you know, in the long run, I think he's going to be fine. I still have, I have them all ranked basically the same way I had them ranked coming into the year. So my opinion on them hasn't changed. For Garver, yeah, I've been encouraged by how much he's been playing, even more than I hoped he would. And I'll point out for him, last April, like I did the same thing for Simeon. Last April, Mitch Garver hit 172 with a 644 OPS. The rest of the way, he hit 289 with a 957 OPS. If this year played out similarly, it wouldn't at all surprise me.
All right, Salvador Perez, by the way, his average exit velocity is nearly in line with where it was last year. Seems like he's just kind of selling out for power. His fly ball rate on the season was 53.6% entering Tuesday. That was 40% last year and 40% for his career. His line drive rate is way down, which has affected the BABIP and, of course, the batting average for Salvador Perez. So I think as he hopefully distributes these batted ball events more equally, you know, you can't always bank on that happening, but we have a pretty big sample size with Salvador Perez.
I
Go ahead.
haven't been moved to drop any of these guys in the rankings in any way. And I haven't really been moved to move anyone ahead of them. So in the immortal words of the Reds owner, where are you going to go? You know, like, let's say you have any of these guys on your team. What do you like? Who are you supposed to add? Like, Alejandro Kirk just had his first extra base hit of the season. There are like 10 catchers hitting over 200 right now. It's as bad as it's ever been. It's not like you have opportunities, even for someone like Mitch Garver, who's relatively low end relative to the other guys, but I still think is a must roster player, a must start player. Like, there's nobody that I'm looking at and saying, wow, I'm glad I have that. Like, there are 27 catchers with 50 plate appearances this season. Would you like to know how many of them are hitting better than 267?
That's a very specific number. I will say 2.
I know the number 1 and number 2.
This was coming into today.
I know Travis d'Arnaud is batting like well over 300. That's the only one I know.
Over 267, I'll say, yeah, 2 seems like a good. I'll go 3.
You guys are way over. Travis d'Arnaud is the only catcher hitting better than 267. Elias Diaz is hitting 267. He is number 2 at catcher. Yeah. 6 catchers are hitting better, are hitting 250 or better. Let's see. 3 catchers have more than 2 home runs. I believe 3 catchers have more than 9 RBI. 4 catchers have more than. You can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, it's a struggle. It's definitely even more so than it normally is. The catcher is always kind of a wasteland, but it's been really bad. We were talking beforehand. Second base, I was updating my rankings on Tuesday. It's a wasteland right now. Trevor Story has done nothing. Whit Merrifield dropped in the lineup. Jose Altuve just came back from injury. Marcus Semien has been awful. Ketel Marte.
It's possible that those 2 positions would be more impacted by an offensive environment where the ball's not traveling as far and the offensive results are down, because those would be the 2 places where you would expect the most marginal offensive production. So it's possible that that's what we're seeing, but Grandal, Garver, and Perez have all been guys who've hit the ball really, really hard, even relative to baseball players, not just catchers. So you wouldn't think they would be impacted. If anything, if they were doing well, you might expect them to be better relative to the position than they would normally be. So I can't bring myself to be worried about any of those guys.
Plus, I'm going to say this again. I feel like we were having these exact same conversations at the end of last April.
The one thing I will say is they're all 31 or older and catchers. So like Scott said with Yasmani Grandal, it's possible that this is just it. That the end comes quicker than you expect, and sometimes you don't get warning signs, but like, I need more than 70 some odd plate appearances.
Okay, so you guys would be looking to buy on all 3 if you could.
Yes.
Well, I guess you don't want 3 catchers on your team, but you know what I'm saying.
One's enough for me.
Buy one in 3 different leagues. Yes.
There you go. Waiver wire pitchers. I wanted to mention some of these names that popped up on Tuesday. Bruce Zimmerman has now allowed 2 earned runs or less in all 5 of his starts. Chris Flexen now has 3 starts in a row, allowing 2 earned runs or fewer. Brad Keller makes it 4 quality starts in 5 tries. This one was up against the Cardinals. Christian Javier, 2 solid starts in a row, 5 1/3 shutout innings against the Mariners. Michael Wacha has now allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in all 5 of his starts this season. And then Jamison Tyone turns in his first quality start. It was at the Blue Jays. And I noticed he threw his cutter a season high 28% of the time. It's a pitcher he just started throwing 2 starts ago. So I found that kind of interesting. Scott, any names that stand out here for you? Tyone, Wacha. I just read Javier, and then I combined Wacha and Javier together, and it made Walker. Wacha, Javier, Brad Keller, Flexen, Bruce Zimmerman.
We were just talking about how crazy it is the way certain hitters' batting averages look right now. It's wild looking at some of the pitchers, the like just lame pitchers, what some of their ERAs look like right now. Wacha's ERA for the year is 1.38. Jamison Tyone's ERA is 2.84, and Bruce Zimmerman's ERA is 1.48. It's like, how? Well, like, that's just bonkers. That's just bonkers. And like, I don't think it's a reflection of how good these pitchers are in any way. The one who kind of is capturing my imagination a little bit is Bruce Zimmerman, who I've talked about before. His swinging strike rate, excluding this game, hasn't been updated yet, but it's 12.3%, which is good. His xFIP is 284, which is good. I mean, these are a lot of the numbers I normally rely on to evaluate pitchers. Bruce Zimmerman is showing up high in them, as well as having that low ERA. He hasn't pitched particularly deep into games yet. Only once has he gone 6 innings. But it's possible. It's possible he's going to be halfway decent for the long haul. And I would say of these three, he'd be the one I'd most likely to pick up. I'm still not especially motivated to do it. But Tyone and Waka, I don't see a lot of encouraging signs there, projection-wise.
Yeah, I think the top 3 for me on this list: Zimmerman, Christian Javier, and then Tyone after, just because I don't really trust Flexen, Keller, or Waka very much. Chris, would you drop Tyler Mahle for any of those names?
I don't think so. Like, I'm interested in Zimmerman. The changes that he's made to his pitch mix are sort of interesting, throwing more changeups in particular, but his fastball is so bad that it's just like, it's really hard to be good with a fastball as bad as his. I mean, the swinging strike rate entering today's start was like 7% with the fastball. I think his WOBA allowed with the pitch last season was almost 500. Let me see, 491 WOBA allowed last season, 711 slugging percentage with his fastball. So you can only go so far, and he's throwing it 33% of the time right now, and even that might be hard to get away from. So I think there's a fairly low ceiling on what Bruce Zimmerman can be, but what he's shown so far is somewhat interesting.
All right. Before we hit the break, I want to remind everyone you can leave a 5-star rating on Spotify. This is something that's just popped up over the last couple of months. So if you do listen to us on Spotify, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating there. We really do appreciate it. We'll take a quick break and we'll return right after this. The news and notes, we've already mentioned it, but Joe Adell has been demoted to AAA while Jose Rojas was recalled. And I assume that Adell could be dropped in all redraft leagues.
Well, I don't know that you need to drop him in all those 5 outfielder leagues. He becomes one of the better prospect stashes out there, I would say. So if you're in a league where it's obvious you need to be stashing O'Neal Cruz or Nolan Gorman or whoever, then you probably need to be stashing Adell as well. And frankly, if they're not going to play him every day, it's better that he's in AAA for his development.
There are still things to be positive about, even as bad as things have been. I don't know why his defense is so bad. That's baffling. I don't remember that being a scouting thing. But 531 expected WOBA on contact. Like, he was crushing the ball, so I still have hope. But yeah.
The Reds activated catcher Tyler Stevenson, and they placed Joey Votto on the COVID IL. It's unclear how much time Votto might miss. Lou Trevino.
Did you guys see his tweet yesterday?
Yes.
Did we talk about that on yesterday's podcast?
No, I didn't mention it, but yeah.
He quote tweeted a piece from Fangraphs, like, is this the end for Joey Votto? What was it? Something like, I'll see you in 5 months or something?
I think he said
or 5 months to go.
5 months to go. He's like, I don't know, get ready or something like that.
I'm enjoying Joey Votto's time in social media.
Yeah, and then the next day he's placed on the COVID IL. Here we go. He said 5 months to go. Enjoy the show. And then I saw that Amir Garrett quote tweeted it, and he's like, I know Joey Votto. This man's about to go off. So hopefully that's the case, because I have a few Joey Votto shares myself. Lou Trevino was reinstated from the COVID IL on Tuesday, and I just saw that
real
he
bad
pitched in that game.
Yeah.
So Danny Jimenez pitched in the 8th inning they had a 2-run lead at the time, and he faced the top of the lineup against the Rays. Kirby Snead came in for the save. He blew it. He gave up 2 runs, so we got a tie game going into extra innings. Lou Trevino gives up 5 runs, 4 of them earned on 4 hits, a walk. Just looked absolutely terrible. So if you picked up Danny Jimenez in the meantime, I think there's a chance that he might just stick as the closer for now because he's been really, really good.
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani was back in the lineup as the DH on Tuesday. Love to see that. Tigers pitching prospect Alex Faedo will make his debut on Wednesday, starting one of the doubleheader games against the Pirates. My guess is that he'll be optioned back after this start. Former first-round pick in 2017. He missed all of last season due to Tommy John surgery. Scott, is this just a name to watch for now? Alex Faedo with the Tigers?
I mean, he got off to a really good start in the minors this year, but he'd kind of been off the prospect radar for a while, and much higher end Tiger prospects have all pretty much flopped so far. So I'm not especially motivated to pick up Faedo or anything, but sure, keep an eye on it.
Luke Voigt began a rehab assignment at AAA on Tuesday. He's on the IL with a biceps injury. Kyle Lewis will begin his rehab assignment at AAA as well on Tuesday. He is 46% rostered. And if Jared Kelenic just continues to play this bad, I think he's probably going to be the one that loses out on playing time. But Kyle Lewis is coming back soon.
Mitch Haniger's out for a while now. So is it still, I don't know that anybody needs to lose playing time.
Fair. MJ Melendez made his debut at DH while batting 7th in the lineup on Tuesday. He went 1 for 3. I was really impressed. I saw some of his plate appearances. He was taking close pitches. His pitch recognition looked solid. He had a walk as well, 2 hard hit balls, including one that went 375 feet. It was 102 miles per hour off the bat. Would have been a home run in 9 of 30 ballparks. So a nice little debut there for
least,
MJ.
Maybe last season. I don't know if they've updated that yet.
Yep. Edmundo Sosa was placed on the COVID IL by the Cardinals, and as a result, prospect Juan Yepez was recalled. He was hitting .279 with 9 home runs and a .974 OPS at AAA this season. Scott, should we add Juan Yepez anywhere or just see if he plays in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, we got to see how much he plays. He had some deep sleeper appeal back in spring training when it looked like he might win the DH job. Pretty good hitter, but so let's see how much he plays and react to it then.
Miguel Sano will undergo surgery later this week to repair a torn meniscus in his left knee. Wade Miley is set to begin a minor league rehab assignment on Thursday. Carlos Santana was scratched Tuesday due to right ankle soreness, and this is especially interesting because Royals first base prospect Nick Pratto has been coming around recently in the minors. So if there's any extended time missed for Santana, just remember the name, Nick Pratto. Josh Winder is expected to make another start this Friday in Oakland. He was great in his previous start. Wilson Contreras was not in the lineup Tuesday with an undisclosed injury. He is day-to-day. Sonny Gray will make a second rehab start at AAA later this week. He's on the IL with a hamstring injury. And Nelson Cruz exited Tuesday's game with back stiffness. So if you were hoping for Coors Field to get him back on track, you might have just missed out on it, unfortunately. Is Jazz Chisholm awesome? Let's talk about it. He went 2 for 5 with a double, 2. All right, fair enough. Let's move on. He went 2 for 5 with a double, 2 RBI, and he is now batting .318 on the season. Has 4 homers, 3 triples, 5 doubles total, 4 steals, and OPS over 1,000. I noticed he's dropped the ground ball rate quite a bit this year. Line drives, fly balls are up, the pull rate is up, and earlier in the season, the StatCast numbers didn't really back it up. All of a sudden, the expected batting average and expected slugs, they look really good for Jazz Chisholm. Chris, what do you think? Is Jazz Chisholm awesome?
Yes. Now, is he this good for fantasy? That's a different question. Jazz Chisholm is indeed awesome. But I'm skeptical that this just represents some new baseline level of expected production from Jazz Chisholm. He's still striking out quite a bit, not an alarming amount, but 27% is not so far from 29% that you can just say it represents a new skill set. I think that's probably, if he struck out once, maybe twice more so far this season, he would have the exact same strikeout percentage. So not really ready to make any sweeping declarations there. He's hitting the ball really well, but that's the kind of thing Jazz Chisholm can do from time to time. We saw it last April. He was one of the best hitters in fantasy.
One of the
now,
few.
I'm not exactly sure whether the underlying numbers were the same, whether he was hitting the ball as hard consistently as he is now. He had a 27% line drive rate, a 31% hard hit rate based on Fangraphs splits page. I'm not sure how that compares, but I'm looking it up right now. Let's see. Trying to kill time. 26% line drive rate, 35% hard hit rate. There's differences there, but for the most part, this looks like just a locked in version of Jazz Chisholm. And it's entirely possible that he's just locked in now, that this is just the light switch flipped on and Jazz Chisholm is just going to be an amazing player moving forward. But I'm not prepared to say that yet, because we saw him be streaky last season. And the thing about streaks is they come and they go. They ebb and they flow. And so I want to see what it looks like for Jazz Chisholm when he's not hot before I make a call. And maybe that's a cop-out. But I guess it's all to say that I wouldn't recommend going to try to buy Jazz Chisholm right now.
Fair enough. So I guess the flip
That's
side
not to say sell Jazz Chisholm, to be clear.
Yes, that was my next question. Scott, obviously you were one of the more skeptical people on Jazz Chisholm coming into the season. What have you seen? Would you look to sell high on Jazz based on what he's done thus far?
I am a little skeptical too. I mean, it's possible it's a breakout. The talent, he has a great tool set, and a lot of times those guys do break through and become studs. So that was always on the table. But like Chris said, I mean, the biggest changes in the underlying numbers are line drive rate. It's just ridiculously high right now, obviously unsustainably high. And the barrel rate is about twice what it was last year. Not that that isn't a number he could sustain, but as I pointed out a number of times, barrel rate this early in the season could just be an indicator of streakiness.
And then those are just two incredibly noisy stats. And
Right.
when you talk about barrel rate, like his barrel rate is twice as high as it was last season. It was 9% last year. It's 15.6%, so almost twice as high. What that means is through, 18 games, something like that, he's got 3 extra barrels. 19 games, so he's got 1 barrel per every 6 games. Line drive rate, probably a somewhat similar number. He probably got like 10 line drives right now, and so if he had 8, it would be the same rate as last season. So
true.
That's not to say he's not, like, he is playing well, and he's capable of continuing to play well. And there aren't a lot of guys who are capable of 4 home runs and 4 steals in a month. Like just flat out, just that part of it makes it so that you probably shouldn't be selling Jazz Chisholm. And
just to fit in with the theme of the show, as Chris mentioned it, I mean, Jazz Chisholm was one of the few players who was awesome last April as well. Yeah. And then he wasn't basically any month thereafter. He was kind of the opposite of so many studs around the game. And that's not to say this year is going to repeat last year for all of these players, but it's just to point out how abruptly and how drastically things can change, as it did for these very players last year.
I know last year, I think it was mid-May, he got hit with a hamstring injury, and then he had a COVID situation later on in the season. I'm making excuses for the guy, but there was some stuff that he was going through last year. The pull rate, I've mentioned this for a lot of basically any hitters that are playing well right now. The pull rate is up. It is up tremendously for Jazz Chisholm. So that is something I have noticed for him. I would look to sell high, I think, in a points league, just because I don't think the plate discipline will ever be great.
Sure.
Look, if he's this good, like he's just going to be good in that format regardless. But I would look to sell high maybe in that format, but in Roto.
And I'll stress high. Like, I mean, obviously the upside is evident, and you don't want to just out of fear pass up one of the biggest breakout players of the year. Like, you don't want to do that. But given how desperately most people need hitting right now, you could probably get a heck of a lot for Jazz Chisholm, and it might be worth pursuing. I've been reluctant to move him up at, you mentioned second base, Frank. So many of the great hitters at that position are just off to dreadful starts. And I've been reluctant to move Chisholm ahead of them because I don't feel like they'll perform that way all season long. And I'm skeptical he'll sustain this pace all season long.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I actually did move him up quite a bit in Roto. I moved him up to my 5th ranked second baseman. So he's behind Story. He's behind Merrifield. He's just ahead of Altuve, Semien, Ketel Marte. Altuve, it's close with because, if he does what we all expected to, he should still be very good. But yeah, he's top 5 now for me. We'll see if he can keep it up. Waiver wire hitters I wanted to mention. We've already talked about Tommy Pham. Aaron Hicks went 2 for 3 with 2 walks, 2 runs scored. He attempted a steal, but was caught. He has attempted 4 steals in 20 games played. Find it interesting. He's 23% rostered. Again, that's Aaron Hicks. Sheldon Noisy, another strong game, 3 for 5. He's batting .329, 50% rostered. He has second and third base eligibility. Chris, Aaron Hicks at 23% and Sheldon Noisy at 50%. Do you think those roster rates need to be higher for either?
No, Hicks is one of those players that's really tough because, look, if he continues to attempt a stolen base every 5 games, that would be, 25 over the course of a full season, maybe 30. That would be notable, and he would probably be a must roster player in Roto leagues. But I'm not necessarily convinced that that's something you should buy into just yet. His sprint speed is still pretty mediocre right now, and he's 2 for 2 and 2 on 4 attempts. So I'm not sure how much he'll keep running. And he's one of those difficult players who is probably more valuable in points leagues where, for the most part, you have only 36 outfielders. He's not going to be one of the best 36 outfielders. So I think he's pretty fringy in every format.
All right. In deeper leagues, a few names stood out. Yadiel Hernandez, 3 for 4 with a double and 2 RBI. He's batting .429 over his last 7 games. Mike Moustakas is back with the Reds. He went 2 for 4. He hit his first home run of the season. He's got 6 hits over 5 games since returning from the IL. Edward Olivares, 4 for 5 with 2 doubles, and he was leading off in this game. He's batting .379. Christian Walker went 2 for 5. He hit his 6th home run of the season. The expected numbers look much better for Christian Walker right now. And the last name on this list, Chad Pinder, he went 2 for 4. He has 8 hits in 5 games since returning from the IL. Scott, any standout here? Yadiel Hernandez, Moustakas, Olivares, Christian Walker, Chad Pinder.
I'm kind of interested in several of these guys, actually. We talked about Yadiel Hernandez before, just a really interesting profile. Not going to be a power guy because he puts the ball on the ground too much, but like the shift can't stop him because he just hits the ball everywhere and he doesn't strike out much. So he's probably a pretty safe source of batting average. I don't think he's going to play quite every day, so that might knock him out from standard mixed league consideration. But it's an interesting Michael Brantley-ish profile there for Yadiel Hernandez. Christian Walker, you mentioned he is impacting the ball very hard, putting it in the air a ton. And maybe as the environment conditions improve, as the weather warms up, that's going to translate to a better success rate on those balls he's putting in the air. I'll also note his line drive rate is virtually non-existent at this point, which basically means he hasn't hit any line drives yet. He hasn't gotten those surefire hits on all the balls. So that explains why his batting average is so low relative to the way he's hitting the ball. But if he keeps hitting the ball like he's hit it, I think his numbers are going to be pretty solid, much improved from last year when it looked like he had nothing left. So Christian Walker is kind of an interesting pickup. And there was a third one.
Edward Olivares.
Yes, that's the guy. He is often...
It's finally happening, maybe. I've been touting Edward Olivares for like 3 years, I'm pretty sure, as a deep sleeper. And
yeah,
some interesting stuff there.
Chris, no, he just had a great game. That means the Royals are going to send him down after this one, of course.
He's been the beneficiary of Adalberto Mondesi going down. They've had They've had Whit Merrifield move back to the infield. Olivares has played almost every day since then. Already 2 stolen bases. Got the 4 hits today. He showed some power in the minors as well. And
he's got 4 stolen bases on the season now, right? Or is it just the 2?
Just
the
2.
No, just the 2.
Just the 2. Yeah, but it could finally be happening. He could finally have some roto appeal.
All right, a few other hitting standouts I wanted to mention. Alec Bohm was moved up to number 2 in the lineup for the Phillies. He went 2 for 4. He's now batting .322, 75% rostered. So might be out there in some 10-team leagues. Definitely should be added. And in deeper leagues, I might even be looking to buy high on Alec Bohm. I really like what I've seen there. JD Martinez, back-to-back games with a home run. He has 5 hits over these last 2 games. Carlos Correa slowly coming around. He went 2 for 5. He has 13 hits over his last 6 games. The batting average is up to .264. Aaron Judge is absolutely on fire. He went 2 for 5 with his 9th home run, ties him for the league lead with Anthony Rizzo and CJ Cron, who also hit his 9th home run on Tuesday.
Made a child cry today.
Who is that? CJ Cron?
Aaron Judge made a child cry.
That's not true.
Of joy.
Okay. Yes. I saw that. That was actually really cool. The Blue Jays fan,
very cute.
Caught the home run and he gave it over to a young Aaron Judge fan. That was awesome. Giancarlo Stanton went 1 for 4 with his 5th home run. He now has an 8-game hitting streak, 3 homers during that span. Bo Bichette slowly coming around as well. He went 2 for 4. He has 7 hits, including a home run and a steal over his last 4 games. Seiya Suzuki, all of a sudden going the other way, went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. He is batting .204 over his last 15 games. Strikeout rate is up. Fly ball rate is 55%. So I think Suzuki might be selling out just a little bit too much right now. Frankie 2 hits. Bud, what's going on? 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. He is batting .213. He's still 76% rostered. Scott, is it okay to drop Frank Schwindel?
Yeah, I would be okay with that in most contexts if there was somebody worth picking up instead. I'd drop him for like Tommy Pham, for instance. I wouldn't drop him for like an Edward Olivares, but that's, it's a position where you need to be getting production, and he's not providing it right now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely dropping him for league leading batting average, Eric Hosmer. Hosmer.
I would drop him for Olivares, honestly.
Yeah.
I guess it depends what you need, but if you need stolen bases, Olivares has a lot more potential there.
Hosmer is now 80% roster. All right, someone's listening. Willie Adames went 1 for 4 with his 6th home run. He has 5 homers over his last 8 games. Luis Arias made his season debut on Tuesday. He was batting 9th. He went 1 for 3 with a walk, run scored, RBI, and caught stealing. At least he was trying to run, I guess. Bobby Witt Jr., 2 for 3, hit his first home run of his career. He's batting .341 since he was dropped in the lineup. And the Nationals enjoyed
11-game hit streak for Witt.
Yeah, awesome. Love to see it. The Nationals enjoyed their first game in Coors. 5 players with multiple hits, including Josh Bell went 3 for 5 with his 3rd home run. Keibert Ruiz went 3 for 4 with 3 RBI. Juan Soto also hit his 5th homer of the season. There was a few pitching standouts that we probably should mention. I don't know if there's anything actionable with any of them, but we'll do it quickly. Alek Manoah makes it 5 for 5 in quality starts to open the season. Brandon Woodruff, season high 12 strikeouts against the Reds. Carlos Rodon has now allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in each of his starts. Julio Arias, back-to-back quality starts. He has allowed 1 earned run or fewer in 4 straight. And then Kyle Wright, not really an ace-like performance in this one. Still pretty good, but he was much more human. 7 innings, 9 hits, 3 runs, 3 strikeouts. Chris, anything you'd like to add on Kyle Wright, Julio Arias, Rodon, Woodruff, Alek Manoah?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, both Rodon and Wright. I think it's a good sign that they got good results despite not necessarily either having their best stuff or pitching at their best. They both had 3 strikeouts, didn't get a bunch of swinging misses like we've gotten used to. And obviously Carlos Rodon is both much higher end and more proven than Kyle Wright, and I have more confidence in him. But it's good to see both of them have that kind of outing when their stuff wasn't at their best. And then Brandon Woodruff, there's been some concerns this season. He hasn't pitched super well, but there had been some stuff with his fastball not playing up quite as much. The swing strike rate hadn't been where we'd seen it. And Woodruff is a guy who, unlike a lot of pitchers, really relies on his four-seam fastball, especially to get strikeouts, and he has a very high swing strike rate on it. He got a ton of swinging strikes today, 8 of them on the fastball, 18 overall. So that's a very good sign. He's fine. He's an ace.
Scott, this guy is not necessarily an ace. He once was considered an ace. Noah Syndergaard, a 7-inning quality start at the Boston Red Sox. I can't figure him out right now. He's like pitching to contact. His control has been awesome. Only 5 walks through his first, I believe it's 5 starts here. He's got a 2.63 ERA. His xFIP is up over 4. If you can cash in on Noah Syndergaard, would you look to sell high on him?
Yeah, I consider him a pretty obvious sell high candidate.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see, though, at least coming into this start, his swinging strike rate is basically what it's been throughout his career. It hasn't translated to strikeouts, obviously, and the velocity is way down. So you would expect the swinging strike to be down too, but it hasn't been. So that, that got me thinking. But I still think that the more reasonable take is that he's due to regress here.
All right, the call to the bullpen. Edwin Diaz picked up his 5th save of the season. Liam Hendricks pitched a clean 9th inning for his 6th save and 2nd in as many days. Joe Barlow pitched a clean 9th for the Rangers, picked up his 2nd save. He's still 62% rostered if you need a save source out there. For the Red Sox, Jake Diekman was used to record 4 outs across the 6th and the 7th innings. Ryan Brazier pitched in the 8th. And Hansel Robles was warming up to pitch in the 9th inning. They had a 3-0 lead at the time. And then JD Martinez hit a solo home run in the 9th. That made it 4-zip. And then they went with Sawamura in the 9th inning. So unfortunately, no save for Hansel Robles. For the Brewers, Devin Williams got his 2nd save. Josh Hader was unavailable due to back spasms. The Diamondbacks, Joe Mantiply picked up his 2nd save with Ian Kennedy pitching 3 of the last 4 days. And we already mentioned everything that went on with Oakland. It's just Utrivino made his return. He got blown up. So Danny Jimenez looks like maybe he will get more save opportunities moving forward. To stream or not to stream, let's start with Wednesday. Madison Bumgarner at the Marlins. Eliezer Hernandez versus the Diamondbacks. Jose Quintana at the Tigers. Martin Perez at the Phillies. Dylan Bundy at the Orioles. Kyle Bradish versus the Twins. Garrett Whitlock versus the Angels. Michael Pineda and Alex Faedo are both going up against the Pirates.
So I think yesterday I said Bundy, Eliezer Hernandez, Madison Bumgarner. Not that I like any of them, but if you're forcing me to pick 3, I might move Jose Quintana ahead, maybe to the top of that list. But you'd rather not start any of these guys.
In a Roto league, I might just have Garrett Whitlock at the top. Although Madison Bumgarner, the Marlins have been aggressive with platooning. They've sat Jazz Chisholm and Jesus Sanchez against some lefties. I would be surprised if they sat Jazz today, but it wouldn't surprise me if Sanchez was out. But Marlins are like 26th in WOBA against lefties, so that may not be the worst outcome.
Yeah, Mad Bum, much like Brad Keller and Chris Flexen, who we mentioned earlier, the ERA looks good, but the underlying numbers do not.
Yeah, no, not someone you want on your team long term, I don't think.
For sure. For Thursday, we've got Rich Hill versus the Angels, Adrian Hauser versus the Reds, Taijuan Walker at the Phillies, and Nick Martinez going up against the Marlins.
I think Hauser might be the only one that I'd want to go with.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nick Martinez is okay, but I don't love it. Adrian Hauser, yeah. Let's do that. All right, we're going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.